Well, I think this is a more current film too. This is one we should be looking at because it's more current form. This was a game that I thought the game in the first half, the first 40 minutes was a game of a comedy of error, like a lot of fundamental mistakes on both sides, and particularly from the Cronulla point of view, they had 2 tries on in this first half of the match that certainly should have eventuated in tries, but it didn't. And at half-time, Manly led his the drop kick from a field goal by Gibbs.
Highly criticised
Early in the match. And eventually was a try just in half-time, which made it 4-0 in favour of the Manly side, which I thought certainly flattered Manly. But in the second half, we saw them put the game together, Cronulla, when it was a pass, came out to, it was a bad pass to lead when Archer picked the ball up, and I think he wondered what happened when he saw the opening there, just ran straight through without a hand being put on him and scored underneath the bar.
To get in behind the defence.
It was Manly's.
And that's right, and that was a defensive lapse from the Manly side, and from that point onwards, I thought Cronulla came home. They put the game together, and they won this game. But remember, it was only 3 tries each. It was the goal kicking of Rogers that really won the game for Cronulla on that day. He kicked, from memory, about 4 goals that day.
When assessing the grand final, you've got to consider that Manly were without Martin and Harvey in that game, and also Cronulla had Pearce, and they haven't got Pearce on Saturday, so that's pretty important.
Well, as I was going to mention, Pete, they haven't got Martin and Harvey, and I think over the last couple of matches against Parramatta and last week again against Western Suburbs, Harvey and Martin have played some prominent parts in the wins of Manly. And Greg Pearce played a prominent part in the victory of Cronulla that day with his strong defence work.
So he did.
And was the best player on the field before he got sent off against Western Suburbs the next week.
Yep.
My clearest recollection of that game was that the tremendous pace in the Cronulla back line, and particularly in the centre area, in the second half. Manly there, they really seemed to couldn't cope with them. There was holes appearing everywhere.
Not holes, yawning chasms.
Gaps.
Well, they were huge gaps though, Ferris. Well, I'm joking about it, but sometimes Chamberlain and Rogers ran into gaps 10 and 15 metres wide.
It looked like at some stage non-existent. Manly offence.
See, it does pay to run your own show. I had that come in on cue just as I made that observation, you see.
But probably one of the most worrying things for Manly, and I'm sure that Frank Stanton and the players would have corrected it for Saturday, with the number of gaps on the blind side.
Yes,
Mullane, he had a picnic that day.
3 times in the first 20 minutes.
That's
So
right.
it comes steaming down the unintended line.
Well, of course, Mullane's well-being, I think he's a splendid player, and apart from a couple of defensive lapses, which have been pretty horrible, I think he's the most talented running fullback, Edie apart, in Sydney.
He's not too bad in the high bombs neither. He takes them pretty well, though he failed one day. I remember at the
cricket ground.
At the Endeavour Field one day when the ball fell loose.
And he failed once at the cricket ground too. And
the important point in this game too is that Max Krilich beat John McMartin 14-11 in the scrums. One of the few times this year that McMartin's been beaten for the ball. But he had John Gray as his blindside prop, and Krilich will tell you that Gray is one of the best blindside props, having played hooker for England. He knows what a hooker wants, and John Harvey's in the front row on Saturday, and Harv's had plenty of experience in the front row, but whether or not he can give Krilich the same assistance is a big point.
Well, only broke even last week in the scrums, wasn't it, 8 all?
That's right, yeah, and whoever put the ball in seemed to win the scrums last week.
And you got the same referee this week.
Well, what's the consensus here in the relation to this game? Put Manly into the position of having to play Parramatta, and then there was the drawn game of 13-all, then the replay of 17-11, and then the other game against Western Suburbs 14-7. Is too much football, you think?
No, I think it's exactly the opposite. I think it was a blessing in disguise for Manly because they weren't going well at this time. They needed more football together, and I think the 3 games in 6 days has done them a world of good, and they're a better side for it.
What about you, Clark?
Yeah, I agree. I thought that Manly, probably one of the things that may have been lacking has been a little bit of team spirit in Manly, and I think that this has just welded them all together. What they've gone through with their very, very tough schedule of matches, I think that they've improved their confidence. I think it's improved their football, and I think they're a better football team now than they were midway through the competition.
That was the best result Manly's ever had, being defeated like that in such a lacklustre display, because that made them realise that how vulnerable they were at that point of time, and from then on they've done nothing but look ahead. They've gone from strength to strength.
All right, well, I've already referred to the 2 games against